In a land of glory and power, a king rose above all. He proved that he was untouchable. But when his pride reaches his peak, it remains inevitable. For 7 long years, he was humiliated by his pride and ruin. His ruin is redeemed, a history that changed an empire, and you will change your voice. The glory of Babylonia and the pride of King Babylonia. The city, with its imposing walls and 2 suspended gardens, shines under the sun, displaying itself as the most precious jewel of the empire. From his golden throne, Nebuchadnezzar, the undisputed sovereign, observed his upbringing with pride. "I built this city," he boasted to his court. "At my command, it grows and flowers, becoming the pulsating heart of the world." The king was admired by his advisors, warriors, and architects, who served as a visionary leader, a man who would transform Babylonia into an unequaled power. His armies conquered distant lands, and his capital prospered with riches from all over the known world. Nebuchadnezzar credited that everything was the result of his strength, his wisdom, and his greatness. The suspended gardens, considered one of the greatest wonders of the earth, were proof of their power. Trees and flowers from all over the world grow in the heights, defying nature. Each structure, each temple erected in the name of 2 gods, in truth, exalted the greatness of its own king. Meanwhile, hidden behind this glory, there was a seed of destruction, the excessive pride of Nebuchadnezzar. For him, there was no power greater than his own. Embora conheces stories of a unique and true God, or King Regitava qualquer no keo de sovereignty que no fossa esu. You so, O master of my destiny, he thought, blinded by arrogance. This unbridled confidence placed Nebuchadnezzar in a collision with something far greater than he himself could imagine. When the king was at the height of his power, a divine warning was ready to break his reality. The dream and warning of Daniel Umanite, or the dream of Nebuchadnezzar, was disturbed by an unusual dream. Before his eyes, he saw a gigantic tree that stood behind his eyes, with branches that spread throughout the land. Its foliage was exuberant, and the fruits it produced fed all living beings. You pass by your children in your gallows, and you encourage yourself to rest in its shade. To Arvor he seemed immortal, inviolable. But then, a powerful voice echoes 2 words: "Cut the tree, tear off its branches and pick up its fruits." But now the trunk and the roots are not broken, tied with iron and bronze. May the heart of the tree be changed from human to animal, and let it pass 7 times over it. Nebuchadnezzar woke up scared, with cold running down his head. He knew that here was not just a common dream, but an enigmatic message, the image of a large tree being cut or restless. However, none of your advisors or wise men were capable of interpreting your dreams. A court stayed in silence, fearing what this could mean. Finally, Daniel, or Hebrew prophet, was summoned. Nebuchadnezzar trusted him because he knew that the God of Daniel revealed hidden mysteries. Likewise, when Daniel saw or dreamed, his countenance was mute. The prophet hesitated for a moment, aware of the weight of his interpretation. "My Señor," said Daniel, "I want this dream to be for your friends, and not for you." After a pause, he continued, "The great tree that you saw represents you, or king. Your empire is vast and powerful, extending over many nations. But just as the tree was cut off, you will also be demolished. You will be destroyed for 2 hours, and your heart will be transformed. You will live among your souls, eating your life as you are, and it will be for 7 years, until you recognize that the Altissimo dominates all the kingdoms of earth and grants you whatever he wants." Nebuchadnezzar was saved, but his confidence was not shaken. Embora Daniel's prophecy was clear, or he confirmed that nothing could destroy his glory. The prophet's words seemed distant, and Nebuchadnezzar continued to govern as he warned of no importance. Once the time had passed, Daniel's warning was quickly ignored by Nebuchadnezzar. 1 year after the dream, the king continued to be exalted for his achievements. Babylon prospered more than ever, and Nebuchadnezzar's pride grew every day. One man, he walked along the terraces of the royal palace, observing its magnificent city below. The sky was limpid, and the sunlight reflected on the golden walls of the city. He stood up, as if full of arrogance, and proclaimed loudly, Isn't it a great Babylon that I built with a minimum of strength and for the glory of my majesty?" The wrong words left their lips when, suddenly, a powerful voice dropped two words. "O Nebuchadnezzar," a sentence was decreed. "Your kingdom was thrown away from you. You will be expelled among the men, and you will live as you wish. You will eat 2 fields and spend 7 years in this condition, until you reconnecting that the Altissimo governs over the kingdoms of earth." Immediately, he felt his mind disturbed. Your once clear and rational thoughts start to get confused. He was proud that he sustained himself until he disappeared, and a strange sensation came from his body. His posture became curved, and he began to walk in an unkempt manner. You guard your servants who are close to Requiem, perplexed. I sell or reagir in an animalistic way. His physical transformation was rapid and shocking. Their hair grows messily, as some of their hair becomes elongated and becomes attached to the claws of a passerby. O previously calculating and sovereign memory of the king gave rise to an empty countenance, dominated by primitive instincts. Without control over himself, Nebuchadnezzar escaped from the palace, scratching his hair, heading for the fields. Ali, blessed by 2 men in civilization. The former king went on to live like a jungle animal. He ate his children like boys, slept slowly, and had no more idea of time or of his old identity. The transformation was complete. The ruler of Babylon had fallen, reduced to the most humiliating state he could imagine. The bestial life of Nebuchadnezzar, the days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into years. For 7 long years, Nebuchadnezzar wandered around the countryside, completely exhausted from his former life of luxury and power. With each season he passed, he seemed to become even more immersed in his animal condition. His hardened skin now resembles a wild jungle, and his hair continues to grow in a grotesque manner, like long, unraveled sorrows. He was irreconcilable, a shadow of the king who would one day govern with iron hands. Thus field creatures became his company. He stayed next to 2 trees, ate the grass that was sprouting in 2 fields, and felt the cold wind and the cold wind beat against his new fur, without shelter. In his mind, the world of 2 men seemed like a distant dream. Only the glory of the palace, 2 banquets and acclamations were celebrated. His only objective was to survive day after day, guided by primitive instincts that now dominate his existence. As such, in Babylon, the absence of Nebuchadnezzar was felt, but not completely understood. The governors and counselors who worked to keep the empire running speculate on the king's destiny. Some credit that he was a maldecoado Heres Deuses, while others consider it lost forever. The palace would become a place of silence and mystery, where no one would mention the name of Nebuchadnezzar out loud. Ainda Asim, or continued kingdom. The structure that Nebuchadnezzar had built was strong enough to survive without his physical presence, but everyone knew that the glory of Babylon had been stained by the tragedy that befell its king. However, the divine plane was still in motion. The time of Nebuchadnezzar's humiliation was long and painful and was ending at the end. He was ready to find redemption, and his final transformation would be far greater than anything anyone could imagine. O arrependimento ea restriceo, the 7th year of his humilheo, something silent within Nebuchadnezzar. During a sun-soaked manha, as he crawled through the fields like a costume, he raised his eyes to look at him for the first time in years. The sun shone on him, and in his animalistic condition, his mind began to clear, like a dense summer snow slowly dissipating. Nebuchadnezzar, then, perceives the vastness of the world around him and, for the first time since he was transformed, understands his smallness in the face of the universe. His thoughts turn to Deus, or Altissimo, whose sovereignty he ignored so much. The king, who had previously proclaimed his personal glory, finally acknowledged that all power came from the Creator. The realization was immediate and captivating. O Altissimo is who dominates all the kingdoms of earth. In this moment of epiphany, Nebuchadnezzar began to recover his health. His mind, once dominated by the instincts of a beast, was restored, and he was burned to death. The weight of divine sovereignty fell upon him, conveying humility and reverence, the regret I felt in his heart, and the oil that his excessive pride had been because of his death. To the mercy of God it was granted. In a few years, his human characteristics returned, and Nebuchadnezzar was restored to his ancient form. His appearance changed, but his soul had been deeply transformed. Ao returned to Babylon. The king was no more an arrogant sovereign who had been overthrown, but a renewed Hamim, aware of his mortality and the greatness of God. Now, he understood that his kingdom and his glory were temporary gifts, and that the Most High ruled eternally. The legacy and the final reflection back on the throne, Nebuchadnezzar was a changed man. The arrogance that once dominated his heart had been replaced by humility and gratitude. Your subjects, now we see the king restored. We are amazed. The sovereign who returned to govern Babylon was not more or less obsessed with his own glory, but someone who had learned the most important thing in his life. Sovereignty belongs only to God. Now, instead of exalting himself, Nebuchadnezzar used his position to honor the Most High. He publicly acknowledged that all the power and authority of Vinham Delhi, and that of the men, no matter how great they were only temporary. The king began to govern with justice, being more sensitive to the needs of his people and less concerned with his own name engraved in history. On quiet nights, when he walked through the suspended gardens that he was so proud of, Nebuchadnezzar reflected on the day he had traveled. The power that one day I had taken as guaranteed was now a constant motto that life and human power only break by the divine will. Hoji eu reconhiko, he said, that the Most High governs over the kingdom's two honors and gives whatever he wants. He who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. Thus, the story of Nebuchadnezzar turns into an eternal example of the transformative power of repentance and redemption. His remains were as great as his ascension, but his restoration revealed the true essence of sovereignty, that of God. Tracing the history of Nebuchadnezzar for the contemporary context offers a rich opportunity to apply his teachings in the practical aspects of daily life. We will explore some examples of how the central principles of history can be experienced in the modern world, addressing topics such as ethics, morality, relationships, and overcoming challenges. Humility in the face of success. Practical example. In a corporate environment, a leader who reaches a position of prominence can easily dominate with pride, proving that his achievements are the result exclusively of his own abilities. Just like Nebuchadnezzar, he can ignore the contributions of his team or the importance of external factors that favor his success. A wise leader, however, recognizes that the event is shared and that it is essential to maintain humility, proving that his position does not give moral superiority, but responsibility. Application. Maintain an attitude of gratitude and recognition in the near future. Not working in our businesses, this means valuing and respecting the opinions of others, knowing how to give credit and repay the support received. The importance of recognizing our own limits. Practical example. In modern society, we are often pressured to become superhuman, constantly searching for success at any cost. However, the story of Nebuchadnezzar teaches us that we all have limits and that reconfirming our weaknesses is not a sign of defeat, but of wisdom. Application. In the field of mental health, for example, ignoring symptoms of stress and burnout, believing that we can carry the world on its shoulders, can lead us to physical or emotional collapses. Recognizing the need for rest and self-care, and seeking help when necessary, is a way to apply to the king's life, oiling our human condition. The perigo do pride da arrogancia nos relacionamentos. Practical example. In personal relationships, or pride can be a destructive factor. Many times, people refuse to apologize or acknowledge when they are wrong, allowing their ego to dominate their interactions. Such an attitude can destroy friends, family, or partners, creating emotional barriers that are difficult to overcome. Application. The story of Nebuchadnezzar teaches that reconfirming one's error and asking for forgiveness is based on strength, not fracasa. In a relationship, to humility build bridges and cure wounds. Learning to ignore and give in when necessary can save relationships and strengthen ties. Overcoming challenges through arrepentimiento and reflexo. Practical example. Just as Nebuchadnezzar was humiliated and had to face his quest, many people face periods of failures and quests in life. It is in professional, financial, or emotional terms. A businessman who faces failure or a person who goes through a great personal loss may find himself in a position of despair, very similar to the bestial life that he has experienced. Application. To overcome, in this case, see through the reconfirmation of two errors and allow yourself to be reinvigorated with a new mentality. Nebuchadnezzar was restored to the realization that he does not have absolute control over his destiny. Not every day, this translates into the importance of reflecting on our failures and seeking a new way to face the challenges, with humility, patience, and faith in something greater than ourselves. Ethical and fair leadership practical example. In the political and business scenario, leaders frequently face the temptation to use their power for their own benefit, ignoring the needs that are their responsibility. The abuse of power, corruption, and profit are only modern forms of arrogance that destroy not only the leader's character, but also the institutions and communities he governs. Application. An ethical leader is one who recognizes that his position is temporary and should be used for the community. He governs with justice, always knowing that power is not his own, but an opportunity to serve others. Leadership based on moral principles and justice, in accordance with the change of Nebuchadnezzar. Subscribe now and continue exploring the mysteries of the Christocentric Bible with a focus on Christ and lots of study and responsibility. Don't miss the next videos. Activate the bell to always be connected to content that will transform your worldview.